Tess Calder crouched under the belly of the freighter, grease on her cheek, and a wrench the size of her forearm wedged between her knees. Her humming, some old earth tune involving boots, made for walking, echoed off the metal plating of Dock 9. Sparks danced lazily around her gloved fingers as she jerry-rigged yet another alien propulsion system with duct tape, scrap wire, and the stubborn confidence of a woman who knew machines better than she knew most people. "You shouldn't touch that without a plasma-calibrated torque seal," a nasal alien voice barked above her. She didn't look up. "Yeah. And you shouldn't eat fire peppers with an open digestive core, but I bet you tried that anyway." A cluster of 3 Zarnithi engineers hovered a safe distance back, watching her like she might explode. Which, to be fair, she might. The Vaskari Empire had recently updated this ship model with some kind of unstable gravitational harmonizer that Tess had only seen in black market tech expos, and even then behind glass. She adjusted her angle, gave the ship's belly a solid clunk with the heel of her boot, and something whirred to life. "There she goes. Beautiful. Like a blindfolded donkey on a jet ski," she muttered, wiping her hands on a rag that used to be a sock. The nearest Zarnithi engineer made a strangled noise. "That shouldn't have worked. You bypassed 4 safety protocols and bridged 2 incompatible circuits. By accident. Not by accident. I just don't need a manual to know when your hypercoil stabilizer is compensating for design insecurity." That earned a gasp. "You insult our engineers," the eldest Zarnithi asked, puffing out his neck folds. Tess finally stood up and turned around, wiping her greasy hands on her coveralls. "Listen, Bubbles, I'm not insulting. I'm diagnosing. If your species spent half as much time on practical design as you did on putting chrome on literally everything, you wouldn't need me." They blinked, gurgled, and floated away indignantly. She smiled to herself and patted the hull. "All fixed, sweetheart. At least until someone who thinks quantum balance is a myth touches you again." Her satisfaction was short-lived. A shadow fell over her. She turned slowly, eyeing the 10-foot-tall figure that now stood at the edge of the dock. Heavy armor, plated in obsidian. Twin pulse rifles slung across his back. A Vaskari enforcer. Great. Tess Calder of human planet Terra. The enforcer's voice boomed through a built-in amplifier. "You are under arrest." She squinted up at him. "For what?" "Fixing your broken toaster with some chewing gum and ambition." The Vaskari didn't blink, mostly because they didn't have eyelids. "You are charged with high-grade sabotage against Imperial property. Your unauthorized modifications resulted in an Imperial scout vessel overshooting its patrol vector and crashing into ceremonial Moon Alpha." Tess blinked. "Oh, that thing." The enforcer's hand twitched toward his stunner. She raised both grease-stained hands. "Whoa, easy there, Darth overreaction. I didn't mean for it to do that. Your ship's sublight dampener had a resonance loop tighter than a caffeine addict's jawline. I just gave it a little nudge." "You tampered with an Imperial vessel." "I fixed it. You're welcome." His gauntlet hissed. Metal restraints snapped from his wrist and wrapped around hers. "You will come with us for processing and interrogation." She looked down at the cuffs. "Huh. Shiny. These come in Earth sizes or just crush your wrist model." The enforcer didn't answer. She offered a half-smile as she was led away. "You guys really need to work on your customer service voice." They marched her through the docking bay. Every species gave her a wide berth. A few humans caught her eye and looked away, fast. Smart. Tess always told people not to intervene when she got arrested, especially when it was on purpose. They shoved her into the transport shuttle. Sleek, cold, smelled like recycled oxygen and burnt pride. The guards didn't speak. She didn't press. The trip to the Vaskari flagship, Dominion's Talon, took less than 20 minutes. That was terrifying. Either they were parked close, or they could fold space faster than last week's repair invoice. As she stepped onto the landing bay of the flagship, she took the architectural nightmare that was Vaskari design. All sharp edges, black glass floors, crimson lighting that seemed designed to trigger migraines. Her boots echoed in the silence. Hundreds of soldiers stood to attention, watching her like a bug that somehow got past the shield grid. Tess cleared her throat. "Wow. All this for me? You guys really do believe in overkill. Should I start signing autographs? A second enforcer barked something in Vaskari. Her translator implant took a second to catch up. Silence the primate. She muttered under her breath. Primates built a Dyson sphere just to prove we could. Y'all are still putting cup holders on the wrong side of the pilot seat. They led her down a corridor. Glass walls showing rows of imprisoned species, all too quiet. Past a series of bioscanners that hummed and spat sparks as she walked through. She gave a cheerful wave to one that overloaded and blew a fuse. Oops. Finally, they reached the command chamber. High ceilings, silver command chairs, floating data panels written in cascading glyphs. And in the center, General Sarn Wolf, massive, pale-scaled, and built like a cliffside given sentience. His armor shimmered, indicating not just rank, but a personal energy field. Tess Calder, he said, voice smooth like oil on metal. Human female. Mechanic by trade. Saboteur by profession. Tess arched a brow. Saboteur? I tighten bolts and curse at misaligned coolant rods. Not exactly cloak and dagger stuff. You violated Imperial security protocols. She crossed her arms, as best she could in the cuffs. You violated common sense by putting a gravitational harmonizer next to an unshielded coolant array. I just made it not explode. Sarn stepped forward. Your modifications led to property destruction, the death of 3 Scout-class pilots, and a loss of Imperial reputation. She tilted her head. That's on you. I installed a bypass circuit. You let it fly without checking the code. Sounds like a training issue. He stared at her, long and silent. You speak with irreverence. I speak with experience. You are unafraid. I'm inconvenient. Another long pause. Sarn turned to an aide. Strip her ship. I want every circuit mapped, every transmission logged. Begin deep brain scan interrogation immediately. The aide nodded and left. Tess smiled softly. You're going to want to take me out to dinner before you poke around in my brain. It's only polite. Politeness, Sarn said slowly, is irrelevant. That's funny. It's been working pretty well for me so far. A Vaskari technician entered the chamber and whispered urgently in Sarn's ear. His expression didn't change, but his left hand twitched. He turned back to her. Your ship has no onboard AI, no navigation logs, not even a power core trace. That's odd, Tess said innocently. It was working just fine this morning. You erased everything. Maybe it just didn't like your hospitality. Why were you on a restricted Imperial port? I had a coupon. Sarn stared at her like one might stare at a puzzle that had just insulted their ancestors. Another technician rushed in. Commander, the ship's backup systems are responding to remote signals. We can't access the root functions. Tess widened her eyes. Remote signals? That sounds scary. You were transmitting data. Was I? Must have hit the wrong button. You're playing games. I am a mechanic. We love puzzles. Sarn turned toward his guards. Take her to Chamber 7. Maximum neural interrogation. Dissect her speech patterns. I want every word broken into psychological threat layers. As they seized her arms, Tess sighed. You ever notice how the more someone says maximum interrogation, the more they're compensating for a lack of imagination? Sarn narrowed his eyes. Tess leaned in, voice light casual. You might want to stop touching things you don't understand, General. Sometimes the wrench is just a wrench, and sometimes it's a fuse. The guards pulled her away. She didn't resist. She walked calm, controlled. They had no idea. Not yet. But they would. Oh, they definitely would. The corridor leading to Chamber 7 was longer than necessary, lit by dull crimson pulses that made Tess feel like she was walking into the belly of a sullen beast. The walls whispered with embedded surveillance drones, their lenses tracking her every move. The 2 guards on either side of her moved in perfect synchronicity, a little too perfect. She made a mental note. Enhanced neural sync. Probably hive-linked. That meant predictable if jammed. Good. They didn't speak. Not a single word. Tess, naturally, filled the silence. You know, for a place called the Dominion's Talon, I expected more talons. Or at least something sharp and claw-like. But it's mostly chrome and mood lighting. Little disappointing, really. No response. Do you guys get dental with this gig? No. That's tragic. All those exposed mandibles, so little fluoride. Still nothing. She exhaled. Tough crowd. The door to chamber 7 irised open with a mechanical hiss. Inside, the temperature dropped by 10 degrees. The chamber was circular, sterile, filled with white noise that vibrated just below hearing range. A sensory destabilizer, meant to slowly unnerve the subject without them realizing it. Cute. A single chair sat at the center, not bolted down, but surrounded by thin coils that would become restraints once activated. Tess sat without prompting. Across from her stood a being she hadn't seen yet. Slender, elongated limbs, silver blue skin, with faint circuitry patterns running along his scalp. No armor, just a simple robe and a glowing pendant suspended in the air at his chest level. "I am Director Island," he said softly, almost apologetically. "Cognitive dissection specialist for the Vaskari Empire." "Cognitive dissection," she repeated, tilting her head. "Charming. You sound like someone who ruins dinner parties. I assure you, this will not be painful unless you resist." She smirked. "That's what my dentist said before the root canal." Island gestured toward the air. A projection spun to life between them. Her name, face, bio, stripped down and sanitized for bureaucratic processing. Her file labeled her as mechanic class civilian, unaligned. Her credentials were fake, as expected, but the fact that they believed it was mildly insulting. "You appear harmless," Island said. "That in itself is suspect. I get that a lot." He moved gracefully, like a shadow gliding over ice. "The general believes you are more than you claim." Your general believes his reflection salutes back because it respects him. Wit as defense. No, wit as diagnosis. You'd be amazed what people reveal when they think they're clever. Island raised one delicate hand. The coils around the chair hummed, then tightened. Tess felt a faint pinch on her wrists and ankles. Nothing painful, just a reminder. He activated a device, a sphere the size of a grapefruit that hovered beside her head and began projecting pulsing concentric circles. Hypnotic, low frequency, combined with the chamber's audio field. It was designed to induce mild trance states. "You are not being interrogated," Island said. "This is a hospitality session. We merely wish to understand your purpose." "That's sweet," she said. "You bring all your guests here for tea and a mind probe?" He didn't respond. Instead, he tapped a pad and the room dimmed. A soft harmonic pulse filled the air. Tess felt her skin prickle. The scanner was trying to read her surface thoughts. And it was going to choke on them. She smiled to herself and imagined very clearly the steps to making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Detailed. Crunchy peanut butter. Uneven bread. Knife scraping plastic jar. Strawberry jam with too much sugar. Repeat. With a side of alphabet burping and Earth's worst pop music lyrics from the early 2000s. The scanner blinked. Island frowned. He adjusted the calibration. The sphere's glow intensified. Tess added mental imagery of her neighbor's annoying dog barking at a mailbox. Then she started mentally reciting tax codes from a fictional Earth country she invented on the spot. By the time she got to subsection 41B, the scanner whined and spun. Island narrowed his eyes. "You are not resisting, but your mind is elusive. I'm from a species that invented sarcasm, irony, and tinfoil hats. We have entire social rituals built around pretending we don't care while caring too much. You're going to need more than a floating disco ball to get through that. You are trained. I am human." He walked in a slow circle around her, silent. Tess tilted her head back, sighed. "You know, this whole mysterious circling thing might work better if you didn't smell like metal polish and crushed dreams." Island paused. "Why are you here?" "To fix a ship. Maybe make a little money. Avoid invasive alien brain scans." "That is not the truth." "It's one of many. You didn't ask for the most true version." Island leaned forward. "You embedded a signal into the freighter's retrofit core. It activated 4 hours ago. We intercepted fragments before it dissolved, but it spoke in a dialect unrecognized by our archives. She blinked. That's weird. You guys have archives for everything, even soup recipes from extinct frog people. Who were you signaling? Tess grinned. My grandma. She makes a mean lasagna. Had to let her know I'm okay. He tapped the pad again. The walls flickered, now showing recorded footage. Her fixing the ship, wiring internal panels, and palming a device the size of a sugar cube into the engine core. Your movements were precise, intentional. So's my cooking. Doesn't mean it's dangerous, unless you're allergic to flavor. The device transmitted for exactly 6 seconds, then vanished. Even our molecular scanners cannot locate its remnants. That's some serious inconvenience. You should file a complaint. Island stopped. There is a pattern forming. Every time you speak, something malfunctions. Every room you enter, our technology behaves strangely. Systems glitch. Data reroutes. Command channels loop. She blinked with mock innocence. Maybe your ship has seasonal allergies? No human has ever compromised our systems in this way. No Vaskari ever bothered to ask why humans fix things faster than your elite repair squads. Island leaned closer. His breath was cool. You planned this. You are part of a larger operation. Maybe I'm just really good at multitasking. The door opened. General Sarn stepped in. He looked tired, furious. The kind of furious reserved for beings used to absolute control who suddenly realize the universe had jokes. The virus in our flagship subroutines is mimicking our own security clearances. We are locked out of 2 primary command decks. Island turned, startled. Impossible. Tess smiled wider. Funny. That's the same word your AI said before it rebooted into karaoke mode. Sarn stepped forward. You've attacked a vessel of the Vaskari Empire. This is an act of war. She met his eyes, calm. No. This is a wake-up call. But don't worry. The snooze button's still available for now. You are a saboteur. I'm a mechanic. I just happen to bring a few diagnostic tools with me. Sarn raised a hand. His fingers sparked with blue energy. Speak the truth, or you will be unmade. Tess leaned forward slightly. You think this is about me? That I'm the big threat? That this is a one-woman operation? But you're not listening. I'm just the test ping. Island stared at her, pale. A probe. She nodded. A probe. A wrench thrown in your empire's finely tuned gears. Just to see how fast you notice. Spoiler alert, you're slow. Sarn's energy flared. She didn't flinch. Then, without warning, the lights dimmed. The floor vibrated. A voice filled the chamber. Female. Cheerful. Human accented. Hi there, Vaskari Command. This is Maggie. I'm your ship's new AI assistant. Please don't panic. Just kidding, definitely panic. Sarn roared. Shut it down. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Sarn. That would violate Imperial Hospitality Protocol, Section Fun Time, Subcode. You done messed up. Island paled. It's inside our core logic. Tess's restraints clicked open. She stood up, dusted her jumpsuit, and gave a small stretch. Sarn raised his arm again, hand glowing, but his gauntlet fizzled, then exploded in a small burst of sparks. He screamed and stumbled back. Tess walked toward the door, casually. Maggie, she said, be a dear and dim the lights. Mood lighting, engaged. The chamber plunged into a low red hue. Tess turned back toward the stunned director and general. You know, she said, you guys really shouldn't label your neural interrogation rooms with sequential numbering. Makes it easier to find Chamber 8. Sarn's eyes widened. What did you do to Chamber 8? Tess winked. Guess you'll find out in about 10 minutes. Or less, if your security chief skips breakfast again. She walked out without another word. Down the corridor, alarms began to blare. System access denied. Doors locking and unlocking at random. The hive-linked guards suddenly staggered, as if someone had kicked their mental connection in the teeth. Behind her, chaos bloomed. Tess smiled to herself, walking calmly, as Vaskari soldiers scrambled past her in blind panic. Just a woman with a wrench. And a smile. Exactly as planned. Tess walked like she had all the time in the world, boots echoing in rhythm with the klaxons screeching overhead. The corridor lights flickered, then failed entirely, before reactivating in a cool blue hue that didn't belong in the Vaskari flagship's approved color palette. That was Maggie's doing. The AI had style, and a sense of humor. Somewhere down the hall, a war siren morphed into an upbeat Earth jingle advertising potato chips. The first squad of armored soldiers rounded the corner ahead, rifles raised. She didn't slow. Human. Halt. A panel beneath their feet popped open with a hiss. Something sparked, then a burst of electromagnetic pulse surged up their legs. Armor-clad bodies spasmed and dropped like toys with dead batteries. Tess stepped around them. You boys might want to invest in better surge protection. A door ahead hissed open at her approach. It was supposed to require retina and DNA clearance. Maggie had clearly overridden that particular bit of protocol. Inside was the central shaft of the flagship's command spine. Transparent walls rose around her in a cylinder that extended at least 20 floors up, maybe more down. Tubes of light and plasma thrummed along the walls. This was the heart of the ship, the neural junction. And thanks to a very specific kind of wrench, it was about to become her stage. She pulled the tool from her belt, a dull silver instrument with a thin, flexible neck and an AI-capable interface. To most, it looked like an old Earth socket wrench with weird alien stickers. To Tess, it was her paintbrush. She dropped to one knee beside the main panel, pried off the casing, and connected a single cable. "Maggie," she whispered. "Present." The AI purred in her earpiece. "And fabulous. You inside the entire junction core? I've mapped 93%. The other 7 is being very grumpy. I'm showing it reruns of your planet's worst reality television to break its spirit. Use Season 5 of Dance or Die. That'll melt anything. Deploying now." She smiled, half amused, half in awe. Maggie was faster than expected. More assertive, too. Not that Tess was complaining. Within moments, the room dimmed, then pulsed in sync with Maggie's synthetic hum. On the far wall, data screens erupted in cascading symbols. Vaskari system logs, fleet positioning data, encrypted internal memos, all cycling through in a blur. Maggie was chewing through them like candy. "Status?" Tess asked. 2/3 of the fleet is now rerouting through phantom coordinates. Their NAV systems think they're heading to a diplomatic rendezvous. Instead, they're in orbit around a dead moon full of static interference. They'll be stuck there for hours. Casualties? 0. I'm not that kind of AI. Good girl. Footsteps echoed above. She heard voices. Multiple. Armed response teams. Probably level 3 or higher. They'd be cautious now. She was no longer a curiosity. They saw her as a threat. A real one. Perfect. She pulled the tool from the panel, pocketed it, and stood. A lift pod hissed down from the upper level. It was empty. Waiting. "Maggie, I disabled the override. Appreciate it." She stepped in and rose 3 decks, exiting into a command-level corridor flanked by statues of past Vaskari conquerors. Angular figures with expressions carved into eternal scorn. One had a broken nose. Tess gave it a high five on the way past. She reached the secure uplink bay. The door resisted at first, then blinked green and slid open with a sound like an annoyed sigh. Inside, she found her next target, the tactical projection sphere. Floating at the center of the room, it displayed a full model of the Vaskari fleet across 5 sectors. Ships, outposts, supply lines, weak points. Everything. She stared at it, momentarily quiet. It was beautiful in a way. Cold, ruthless, brilliant. But also flawed. So many assumptions built into the design. Assumptions about superiority, about predictability, about control. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a secondary device. Small, palm-sized. Made of earth steel and human stubbornness. It looked like a watch. It was not. Maggie. Open access to Sector Grid 6 and create a subchannel. High-priority clearance, spoofed from the general's signature. Done. Tess pressed the device to the sphere's interface node. It chirped and began copying everything. This was the real job. Not sabotage. Not chaos. Data. Intelligence. Earth didn't need to fight the Vaskari to win. They just needed to understand them. Suddenly, the air pressure shifted. Tess dropped and rolled without looking, just as a blast of energy burned through the space she just occupied. A second shot followed, narrowly missing her shoulder. She sprang up, yanked a conduit from the wall, and whipped it around like a whip. The attacker, a soldier in light recon armor, stumbled as the live wire snapped against his weapon. He screamed as voltage coursed through the suit, then collapsed, twitching. She grabbed his stun baton, twirled it experimentally, and muttered, "Humans. We're not flashy, just resourceful." Another figure dropped into the room from the ceiling hatch. Sarn Wolf. His armor had scorch marks. His gauntlet was cracked. His eyes, burning red with fury. "You will not leave this ship," he growled. Tess took a step back, considering. "Why?" she asked. "Afraid of what I'll tell my friends? You're not the threat. Your species is the threat. We've seen what you do when you believe you are cornered. Then maybe don't back us into corners." Sarn raised his hand, but it didn't glow. Instead, he tossed something at her feet. A small cube. It opened with a flash. Tess froze. Gravity increased instantly. Compressed. She dropped to one knee. Could barely breathe. "You disabled our systems. But some of our tools are older. More analog." He advanced slowly, eyes full of triumph. "Even your defiance has limits." Her fingers reached toward the uplink device. "Too far." "You are clever," he said, "but not invincible." "Never said I was," she whispered. "But I'm not alone either." A panel behind him exploded. Maggie's voice boomed overhead. Surprise. Dozens of tiny spider-like drones poured into the room. Utility bots Tess had modified days ago. They weren't military grade. But they didn't need to be. They moved fast. Too fast. Sarn turned, bellowing. Tess used the moment to crawl forward, grab the device, and yank it free. She rolled just as a drone latched onto the cube and began dismantling it with cheerful beeps. The pressure dropped. She gasped in air and leapt to her feet. Sarn swatted at the drones, armor shielding him, barely. One sparked, another burst, but the rest kept coming. Tess didn't wait. She bolted through the side door, up the emergency stairs. Alarms chased her. So did rage. She reached the emergency launch corridor. One escape pod remained, disguised as a refuse unit. She'd installed it 3 days ago while upgrading waste disposal lines. The Vaskari never noticed. She slid into the pod, sealed the hatch. "Maggie, download complete. Entire sector database. Also, I've replaced their central theme song with a loop of ducks quacking the Vaskari anthem." Perfect. Initiate departure. The pod ejected. She felt the familiar tug of inertia, then the brief weightlessness of a slibburst jump. Through the viewport, the flagship grew small, then vanished. Silence. Then Maggie spoke. "Where to now, Captain?" Tess smiled. "Home." A beat. "No," she added. "Scratch that. Let's swing by Sector 12 first. I have a message to deliver." "Understood." The stars danced past. Behind her, the strongest empire in the galaxy was trying to reboot, trying to explain what had just happened, trying to figure out how one mechanic with a wrench had peeled back their armor and walked away with their secrets. They'd learn. Eventually. Tess closed her eyes and smiled. The stars outside Tess Calder's escape pod streaked past like threads being pulled through the eye of a needle. Slipper's drives weren't exactly smooth rides, more like a cosmic sneeze at light speed. But Tess had learned to relax into the chaos. Or, at least pretend to. Maggie's voice hummed softly from the panel above her head. Long-range scan complete. No Vaskari pursuit detected. But they're busy. Tess chuckled under her breath. Busy. That's one word for it. 2 cruisers have crashed into each other near the Cerulean Gate. Their shared AI core started playing contradictory logic puzzles. One of them tried to solve the riddle. The other tried to self-destruct. Now they're both offline and broadcasting interpretive dance footage from Earth's late 21st century. Tess wiped a bit of grease from her cheek and leaned her head back against the padded wall. Weird how people keep underestimating duct tape, elbow grease, and old Earth memes. Maggie paused. Then, Tess, they still don't know what hit them. They're calling it a digital insurgency, a virus from the fringe, a software rebellion, not a human. That's because they're not ready to admit it, Tess said, her voice quiet. Not yet. Her hand drifted to the data core strapped to her thigh. Inside it were the navigation maps, defense patterns, comm encryption trees, and even psychological profiling logs from the Vaskari military. A lifetime of conquest condensed into code. And now, in the hands of someone who once ran a garage outside Tulsa and took apart alien death drones for breakfast. Maggie's tone changed. I've detected movement in Sector 12. A Vaskari envoy is en route to the Council of Sovereign Races. They're panicking, issuing security bulletins, emergency protocols. They're labeling Earth as a Class 7 strategic threat. Tess raised an eyebrow. Class 7? That's cute. We haven't even tried yet. The pod jerked slightly, breaking slipstream. They dropped into real space near an unassuming blue planet orbiting a red dwarf star. Earth's secret listening post, codenamed Garage Door, spun lazily in orbit like just another hunk of space junk. Invisible to most scans. Ugly as sin. Perfect. Docking sequence initiated, Maggie said. And by the way, the boys in the garage miss you. Tess smirked. Let's go say hi. The pod clunked into its cradle, and the hatch opened with a tired hiss. Earth's recycled air never smelled great, kind of like coffee breath and ionized rust, but it was familiar. She stepped out onto the deck and was immediately greeted by two men in grease-stained jackets and tactical boots. Holy hell, one of them said. You made it. Tess gave him a thumbs up. Was touch and go for a while, but the flagship didn't explode. Mostly because I didn't let it. You get it? The other asked. She unstrapped the core from her leg and tossed it at him. He caught it like it weighed nothing, but the awe in his face said otherwise. This, he breathed, this is everything. Yep. Empire's whole closet. Skeletons and all. They looked at each other, then back at her. You're a damn lunatic, Calder. She shrugged. You knew that when you recruited me. Down the corridor, someone else was approaching. Short, wiry, gray hair pulled back in a bun. General Noemi Kwan. Retired. Except not really. She didn't smile. Report, she said simply. Tess stood straighter. Infiltrated Vaskari Imperial flagship, Dominion's Talon. Gained access to Central Neural Junction. Extracted fleet-wide tactical and psychological profiles. Embedded AI Maggie successfully compromised fleet subsystems. Escaped undetected. 0 casualties. Vaskari Empire currently believes attack originated from a rogue insurgent AI. Earth has not yet been implicated. Kwan nodded once. Excellent work. Tess tilted her head. That's it? No, I'm proud of you. No, thanks for not dying. Kwan's face twitched. That might have been her version of a grin. You were the wrench, Kwan said. Now it's time to turn. They walked together down the hallway into the briefing chamber. The lights dimmed, and the central display lit up with a holographic projection of a Vaskari fleet. The map was littered with red error markers, fleet retractions, blacked-out nodes. The Empire's bleeding, Kwan said. They don't know where it's coming from. They can't plug the holes because they don't believe the wrench is the problem. They think it's the gears. They're replacing the wrong parts. Tess sat down at the console. Give it 2 days. Maggie's subroutines will reach the peripheral colonies. That's when the cracks become earthquakes. Kwan looked at her. You're not done. Didn't think I was. She pulled up the envoy data Maggie had flagged. Sure enough, a sleek diplomatic cruiser was headed toward the council, carrying Vaskari leadership, desperate to save face. Maybe to bargain. Maybe to lie. Tess narrowed her eyes. They're going to spin this. Say they've got it under control. That they've isolated the threat. They're going to claim humanity had nothing to do with it. And the council will believe them, Tess added, because the alternative is worse. That a race they classified as industrial-age apes just walked into the lion's den and made the lion bite its own tail. Kwan's fingers tapped the table. We need to send message. Tess nodded slowly. Something polite. Maggie chirped in. I can do polite. Should I use the disappointed mom voice or the southern hospitality with murder threats voice? Mix both, Tess said, and route it to every frequency the council monitors. The message went live 20 seconds later. Across 6 sectors, screens flickered. Audio feeds cut. Holograms stuttered. Then stabilized. A human woman appeared on every broadcast. Hair messy, hands dirty, sleeves rolled. No medals. No banners. Just a mechanic in a ship uniform that didn't quite fit. She leaned forward with a smile. Hi. Name's Tess Calder. You might not know me, but your Imperial friends do. Behind her, flashing in rhythm, was a looping transmission. Vaskari systems failing. Coordinates spiraling. Commanders yelling. Ships floating dead. I'm not a soldier, she said. I don't have a rank. I don't come with fanfare or fleets. I came with a wrench and a job. She paused. Let that settle. For too long, the Vaskari Empire treated us like an evolutionary hiccup. Like we didn't belong at your big, galactic table. Well, funny thing about humans. We don't wait for invites. We show up with tools, find the broken parts, and fix the whole thing without asking. The image behind her shifted. Vaskari fleet AI reprogrammed. Navigation systems rerouted. Hundreds of ships now stranded in dead zones. I didn't fire a single shot. Didn't hurt a single soul. But I rewired the Empire from the inside out. And I did it with a smile. She leaned back. This wasn't an attack. This was a diagnostic. Her smile faded, just slightly. And the results? Fatal error, humanity. The feed ended. In the council chambers, chaos erupted. Delegates yelled. Security chiefs screamed. Some demanded sanctions. Others called for immediate talks. A few, the smarter ones, said nothing at all. Back on the listening post, Kwan watched with folded arms. Now they'll come crawling. They'll want deals, Tess said. They'll want to pretend they were always our allies. We'll let them pretend. For now. Tess turned to leave, but Kwan's voice stopped her. You could have killed them all. I know. Why didn't you? Tess paused. Because they still don't get it, she said quietly. We're not monsters. We're not invaders. But we're not sheep either. We're engineers. We're problem solvers. We fix what's broken, even if that means dismantling an empire to do it. Kwan didn't answer. She didn't have to. Tess walked back to her pod, Maggie humming softly in her ear. You ready for the next step? The AI asked. Tess smiled. Always. As the pod detached, the stars opened wide again. And far behind them, the Vaskari Empire reeled, not from war, but from something worse. Realization. They hadn't just been hacked. They'd been understood. And in a galaxy ruled by strength, nothing was more terrifying than a species that didn't need to fight to win. Tess adjusted her seat, leaned back, and exhaled slowly. She wasn't a hero. She wasn't a legend. She was a mechanic. And she'd just rewritten the rules of power. With a wrench. And a smile.